r/adulting. Financial Cap 7329 says, I understand why so many people are addicted to religion or become religious. Religion gives you strength and hope and helps you to cope with life and its harsh truths. For religious people, their religion gives them hopium and copium. I myself stopped being religious because things happened which made me question everything. Things that should not happen according to my religion, but still did and still do. Without religion, you are forced to study the world and humans if you want to understand them. You have to be like a scientist looking for the raw truth. Unfortunately, there are a lot of brutal truths out there, and religious people use coping to protect themselves from those harsh truths. So in all, I understand. There are benefits about becoming religious, but it does make you delusional, which can be a problem when you experience stuff that your religion can't explain, or which shouldn't happen according to your religion. Chanandlabong01 says, me too, honestly. My mom is a delusional religious person, which alienates everyone in her life. For example, the spiritual cause of diabetes is rejection, and she has it because us kids don't spend enough time with her. And if we just acted and did what she said, we are 33 to 43y/o, then Jesus would make her better again. I understand why she believes. I don't want a damn thing to do with it though. A Cowsmeter 78 says, she sounds a little narcissistic. I'm so sorry. Jackalope 84 says, I sometimes envy those who believe everything happens for a reason and there's a cosmic plan. It must be genuinely comforting to those who believe it. Jealous Principal 81 says, as someone who used to be Christian, I can confirm that it was very comforting to fall back on tropes such as God won't give you anything you can't handle, or God has your back at the end of the day. In times of distress, especially. However, I've since rejected religion due to epiphanies I've experienced, including learning physics, understanding psychology, and experiencing a mind shift towards cynicism towards religious topics generally. What a world we live in. I'll Smoke Eat All says, religion is fascinating. I'm an atheist, although I find religion fascinating, nevertheless. You know, the Romans, Greeks, Norse had a god for everything. At the time, those gods represented things we didn't have science to explain. These cultures no longer believe in all of these gods. Why not? Because we have science to tell us how fire, water, love, and everything else works. The remaining god everyone subscribes to today is now responsible for whatever things are left we don't have a firm grasp on. I don't think God is real. I think God is supposed to provide some framework for being a decent human being. But humans are flawed and can frick up any concept. Your benevolent God is telling someone else to kill you. Basically, God has been used as an excuse in both sides to justify generally unjustifiable acts, decisions, and ways of thinking. God is used to control people out of fear of the unknown. It's manipulation on a massive scale, regardless of whether it's ultimately harmful or helpful. BLM for Life says, what if God was a stranger on the bus? Shinmalfer 13 says, I agree for the most part. I'm a religious man who enjoys lectures on evolution more than sermons. You can still be a sensible person while being religious. But yeah, generally it does seem that religions tend to draw in people that willingly make themselves blind to reality. It's very freeing to believe in something, but still be critical about it. Like it seems contradictory, but that's how I feel. Significant Cap 8367 says, a little off topic, but when I read it, I just wanted to say, if you are religious you can be a scientist too. Most of the greatest scientists throughout history were devout in their faith, especially Christians and Muslims. Sure, there are religious people who are science deniers, just as there are also non-religious people who are science deniers. As a religious person and someone who has devoted their life and career to STEM, I find scientific discoveries fascinating and only strengthen my faith. I'm honestly in awe of the universe he created. Wendy Bacanator says, just wait until you learn about faith without religion. Bloodacony 333 says, I think religion is awesome. I got really interested in Christianity and I've been enjoying it so much. I think a lot of our own thinking is delusional and can be a problem when you experience things that your own logic can't explain. Bruce Ed Banana Hulk says, what an insecure way to try to sneakily belittle people. r/adulting. Slight Rent 883 says, not sure if I'm correct in my assertion, but it really does seem that people would rather be entertained by you than have you pour your heart out sincerely and healthily. I'm 29 male, and maybe I just had the worst luck. That and I didn't exactly grow up in a flourishing environment. But still, even when I'm supposedly in a normal environment, I always get small pangs that people respond better when you entertain them. This can be keeping up with their tonality, matching their subject matter like for like and so forth. However, if suddenly you try to be sincere, people give a really flat response and makes me feel like a frick, I'm idiot. Not sure how it is in the rest of the world, but my goodness, British folk can be crazy as to how mean they are, yet all say oh I'm just kidding and never step foot into sincerity. Adzesticlose 5199 says, you have to be close to someone in order to pour your heart out. Otherwise you're just being selfish. No one wants to hear your whining cause then it puts a burden on them. And they didn't ask for it. They're not your therapist. It's not healthy to vent to random people anyways. New Function 6407 says, yes, in America especially, friendships/connections flourish when you have something to offer that enhances the other person's life. Significant Breath 38 says, I wonder what you're trying to be sincere about. I'm the kind of person with a lot on my plate and little care for venting that isn't for trying to find a solution. So if all someone does is, sincerely, complain about their struggles, but never gives a word or thought towards improvements, I get really tired of spending time with them. Especially if they are a casual friend from work or something. Natsa says, when I talk about my problems, my intent is to share my experiences with close friends, even using it as a form of entertainment for bonding, and maybe have a laugh about it. My good friends listen and respond well, offering understanding and empathy. But acquaintances don't get it. They try to offer solutions and turn into Mr./millisecond fix it. They just don't care enough about me and don't want my experience to ruin their vibe/flow. And that's cool too. Livid Parsnip 6190 says, I have certain friends that I'm close enough to that we mutually pour our hearts out to one another. If one of them is in trouble, I would drop everything for them, and vice versa. I have a ton more friends that I'm not as close to. We have fun together, but don't talk about deeply emotional stuff. When someone I don't know well pours their heart out to me, I worry that I'm obligated to try to solve their problem or help them in some way. I don't have the energy to do that for acquaintances. It feels like a burden to me. How do you feel when someone who isn't a close friend pours their heart out to you? Willamby says, personally speaking, I find it so much more interesting and refreshing to engage with people who are sincere and express themselves honestly. I think a lot of people feel pressure to be entertaining, and it can, I feel, lead to issues like social anxiety and to lose a sense of who you really are. You do you, and those who stick around are the ones worth your time. Savings ad 6539 says, most of my close friends were made through groups for various identities or experiences I have, so there's a pre-existing reason to be vulnerable with each other, but I've also had friends I developed from work/school/social events and got to know well over the course of one-on-one friend dates to the point where we could talk about more serious stuff. Are there opportunities to meet people who are in groups where more depth is likely to occur and then get to know them on a closer/deeper level outside of the group? That is, identity-based groups, hobbies, book clubs, etc. Developing closer relationships opens up more space for vulnerability. I agree that there's a point at which it becomes trauma dumping and/or unbalanced, and that's why I have a therapist, but I also frequently vent to friends with whom I have a close enough relationship. I'm sure culture plays a role. It's probably more challenging in Britain than it is here in the States. But also, with people I know who struggle with these same issues, it's usually because they are trying to jump into the deep end when first meeting a person, or going to a group event, and haven't taken the time to get to know that person in more depth one-on-one yet. r/adulting. Rick saying Coral says, can't accept circumstances of my dad's death. Just got news last Saturday that my dad had died. A police officer knocked on my door and told me they found his car 10 minutes from my house and 40 minutes from his. We don't know exactly what happened yet, but they think it was a medical issue, that is, stroke or heart attack. We also don't know why he was in that area, but he had the beginnings of dementia, so I can only assume that he was confused and possibly looking for me because something was wrong. He was also found outside of his car, so we think he pulled over feeling bad, got out, collapsed, and ultimately died. The tow company where we retrieved his car, absolute bastards, as they all are, also said that a lady with her 2 kids saw him and just walked by into her house. I don't know when that happened, and if she's who called 911 or completely ignored him and someone else called later, but we are fairly certain he was lying there dead/dying for 2 days. Thursat. Losing my dad was bad enough, but the thought of him dying confused, scared and alone is absolutely eating me alive. And the thought of someone just walking by and ignoring him is extremely disturbing/traumatizing. My dad was a caring, loving father, my best friend, and my hero. He was a good sweet man. He didn't deserve this, and it is haunting me every waking moment. 330 Kiki says, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for your loss. Your dad sounded like an awesome person, and his death doesn't define how he lived. I hope you can find some answers to help ease your pain. Ordinary Maximum 639 says, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I have been going through the same feeling since December 27th, 2022. I'm still trying to come to terms with my mom's death, and I thought the coroner would bring me answers, but if left me with more questions and some anger. My mom was found at the bottom of her driveway at 7 AM in the morning wearing only a sheer nightgown. Anyone that knew my mom knew she would never walk outside barefoot, let alone in a sheer nightgown. Always dressed to the nines, she also always made her bed before she left her bedroom in the morning, and her bed was not made. Her bedroom was on the 2nd story of her home, so she walked down the stairs and died at the bottom of the driveway. The coroner said it was covered. WTF. It took 2 months to give me that answer. I had to come to terms I would never know what happened. She left a huge hole in my heart along with my sisters. Please take care of yourself. It will consume your every thought if you let it. Miserai says, hey, I watched my mill die from dementia. It definitely haunted me in a similar way to you, yet different circumstances. It came down to the psychological part you describe, trying to imagine how they must have felt in the end. It's scary. It's hard because we think about it as like the end of the story, and it wasn't a happy ending. And you're right, it wasn't. Mine wasn't either. But I'll tell you, the ending is never happy, and always bad in some way. The best thing you can do for yourself is acknowledge his story as a whole, his whole life. He suffered at the end maybe, but at least he didn't see it coming probably. Wasn't tortured mentally too long. He wouldn't want you to be so upset, I'd guess. Maybe try to think about something he would say to comfort you with this, with respect to him. T4089 says, I believe your dad's soul was already with God. I'm not asking you to believe. It's what I believe. A love so great, God can get in there and bring your father's soul into loving arms for the last few days of his life. His soul was at peace, even if his physical body wasn't. As far as the people go, sometimes they are doing the best they can, even though their best is not very good. There's a lot of information and variables in this kind of situation. Some you don't have currently. The people who missed your father's need are flawed. Send loving thoughts of well-being their way. I know it's counterintuitive considering the circumstances, but if you want a peace, this is the best way to go about it in my experience. These people are not always gonna be this way. I'm not the same as when I was inconsiderate of others. I'm a different person now, and there's a good chance many of these people will be too. If they could have done something else to help your father and knew what this something was, it's likely they would have, especially if they knew the way you were feeling right now. You'll see your dad again someday. I believe this will happen, if that's what you want. He may even tell you all the bitterness you carried behind the events of his passing were for nothing, and that he forgives them, and you should have, also. You obviously have a good heart. Let it heal without anger or resentment. Maybe you're not at the point of forgiveness, as these things take time, and you're still so close to the loss. Over time, things will get better. This has been my experience with this sort of thing. There's also gonna be somebody out there in the future who comes into your path and says, I lost a loved one in an uncaring circumstance and I don't know how to move on. At that point, you'll be the only one in the universe who will be able to take away some of that suffering when you say, let me tell you what happened to me in early 2024 and how I got through it. You're going to be alright. That divine appointment will make everything clear. Hope this helps. Best fortune and healing to La Discovery says, when I go, no matter how I go, I hope my children can see how happy I was in life, not how I went through a relatively brief, if not instant moment of my death. Be at peace that you and your dad had a life of love. This is what matters most. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.